I don't think anyone ever expects to find the truth on a rainy Thursday afternoon, especially not hidden inside the glove compartment of an SUV that smells faintly of crayons, stale coffee, and the ghost of carpool mornings. But there I was, standing in our garage with wet hair dripping onto my blazer, keys dangling loosely in one hand, staring at a small black USB drive labeled in Mark's handwriting, dash cam, backup. It could have been anything, really, maybe a fender bender he forgot to tell me about or footage of some reckless driver he wanted to report, but deep down I already felt it. That quiet tug in my stomach, like the way the air shifts just before a storm hits and your body knows it's coming before the clouds even roll in. I didn't know yet that my entire life was about to shift on its axis, but something made me pocket the drive without a second thought. Inside, the house was warm. Safe. Our nanny, Clara, had taken Jamie to his piano lesson and Mark was at the office, no doubt charming clients and balancing our empire on that steady voice of his, the one that always made people feel like everything was going to be okay. I slipped off my heels, padded into the office and shut the door quietly behind me. The laptop booted with its usual sluggishness and my fingers hesitated over the trackpad as the USB popped up on the screen. I clicked through the files, hundreds of them, it seemed, and most looked like the visual equivalent of white noise. But then I saw it, a video, marked with a timestamp from exactly 7 days ago. The night it had rained so hard the gutters overflowed and the streets looked like rivers. I remember because I'd begged Mark not to drive. I remember because Clara had stayed late, and he'd offered to take her home himself. I clicked play. The footage was grainy, the view just slightly off-center from the dashboard, but clear enough. Mark was behind the wheel, hair damp, shirt collar loosened. Clara sat beside him, laughing at something. Her laugh, I'd heard it 1,000 times before. Light, fluttery, like a songbird trying too hard to be liked. In the video, she tilted her head toward him, said something I couldn't hear. He laughed too. Then he reached across and touched her hand. Just for a second, but enough. Enough to curl something sharp and cold deep in my gut. I leaned in closer. The angle shifted as the car bumped over a pothole and the camera tilted just enough to catch it. Her hand on his thigh, his arm slipping around her shoulders, the closeness. The way he looked at her, not with affection, but with that lazy, familiar possessiveness I thought was reserved for me. Then without warning he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't passionate or wild, it was worse. It was casual. Like it had happened before. My breath caught in my throat. I paused the video, stared at the frozen frame of them still tangled together. My hands trembled, but I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I felt this eerie stillness wash over me, like I'd stepped outside my body and was watching someone else's life unravel. I stood up, paced the room. My mind raced not just with anger or hurt, but with something darker. Strategy? Because here's the thing, Mark and I don't just share a marriage. We share a business. A big one. A complicated one. The kind that required countless late nights, sacrificed holidays, and dreams deferred. We built it from nothing. Together. And now the thought that he'd risk all of that for her? For Clara? It almost made me laugh. I didn't watch the rest of the video. I didn't need to. I ejected the USB, tucked it into a hidden drawer, and closed the laptop like nothing had happened. Because I couldn't let him know I knew. Not yet. That night, Mark came home as if the world was still turning just fine. He kissed me on the cheek, thanked me for the dinner I hadn't made, complimented the wine I hadn't chosen, and told Jamie a bedtime story like nothing was wrong. Like he wasn't a liar. Like he wasn't a man who had just dismantled everything we'd built with a single, careless mistake. I watched him from across the kitchen island, every movement of his suddenly alien. I noticed the way he checked his phone under the table, the little smile that flickered when he read a message. I noticed it all now, the signs I'd missed. Or ignored. He still wore his wedding ring. So did I. Long day? I asked, my voice as smooth as ever. Yeah, he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Had to deal with some supplier issues. You know how it is. I smiled. Of course. You're amazing at fixing things. He laughed and kissed my forehead. You always say that. And I always meant it. Until now. When he went to shower, I sat in the dark living room and stared at the window. Rain tapped against the glass like a metronome, keeping pace with my thoughts. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet. But I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't going to scream or throw plates or beg for answers. No, I was going to be quiet. Smart. Patient. He had no idea who he was dealing with. People think that silence is passive, but they're wrong. Silence is power. Silence is the sound a wave makes before it crashes, the held breath before confession, the moment the knife hovers just above the surface. I said nothing. For days. And he didn't suspect a thing. Mark was always a creature of habit, and after 10 years of marriage I had learned to decode those habits like patterns in wallpaper. He kissed me each morning exactly 2 minutes after brushing his teeth, liked his eggs runny and his coffee black, always wore his lucky cufflinks on Thursdays. He called me babe when he was distracted, love when he was hiding something. That week I got a lot of love. Clara still came to the house every day, bright and bubbly, overly polite. I watched her closely. She didn't flinch around me. Didn't act guilty. She even offered to do extra chores, said she didn't mind staying late if I needed more time at the office. I smiled and thanked her, even though the sound of her voice made my jaw tighten. She had no idea I knew. I started documenting everything. Quietly. I took photos of receipts Mark left lying around, hotel charges I hadn't noticed before, odd restaurant bills during times he claimed to be in meetings. I downloaded copies of financial statements from our shared business accounts, looking for anything that might prove he'd been moving money without telling me. I backed up the dashcam footage and hid it under an innocent folder called School Projects. I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I had that. I was building a case. I even started therapy alone. I didn't tell him. I needed someone to talk to who wouldn't tell me to just leave or forgive. I needed someone who'd help me understand how a person could betray you with a smile, could destroy your trust, and then sleep next to you like nothing had happened. The therapist's name was Grace. She was quiet, sharp-eyed, and didn't waste time. "Do you still love him?" she asked during our second session. I thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I think I love the life we built. But him? I don't know who he is anymore." She nodded. "And what do you want to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? I didn't want revenge, not exactly. I didn't want to hurt him just to see him bleed. But I did want justice. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he'd risked, the life he'd nearly shattered. I wanted our child, our business, our home, everything we'd built, not to be dragged through the mud because he couldn't keep his promises. So I decided. I wouldn't confront him yet. Not until I had everything I needed in place. A week after I found the video, I told him I wanted to restructure the business. I said I'd been thinking about long-term growth, about setting up a clearer division of responsibilities, about trust and efficiency. He smiled like I'd just offered him a promotion. "That's why we work so well together," he said, pouring himself a glass of wine. "You handle the future and I handle the now." I wanted to smash the glass in his hand. Instead, I leaned forward and kissed his cheek. "You're right," I whispered, "we make a great team." The next morning, I met with a lawyer. Quietly. Professionally. I didn't file anything yet. I just asked questions. Listened. Took notes. The more I learned, the clearer it became. There were ways to protect myself, to reposition the business, to secure our child's future, and to do it all without him noticing. Not yet. That weekend, we hosted a dinner party. Just a small one, old friends, good wine, candles on the table. I played the role I was supposed to play. The gracious wife, the supportive partner, the woman who laughed at his jokes and touched his arm at just the right moments. Clara wasn't there. She never worked weekends. But still, I found myself watching his phone all night, wondering if he was thinking about her. Our son, Jamie, sat at the table with us for dessert. He's 8, smart, sensitive, with his father's eyes but my stubbornness. He leaned against me as I sipped my coffee and told me, loudly, that I was the best mommy ever. Everyone laughed. Mark kissed the top of my head like we were still in love, and I smiled like I believed it. Later that night, after the guests were gone and Jamie was asleep, we stood in the kitchen, the smell of wine and lemon tart still hanging in the air. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. "You look beautiful tonight," he murmured. "Thank you." He kissed my neck. "I love this life. Us. Everything we've built." I turned in his arms, met his eyes. "Me too," I said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. I loved what we built. I just didn't love who he'd become. He looked at me for a moment, like he was searching for something. "You're okay, right? You've seemed." "I don't know. Quiet lately. I'm just tired," I said. "But I'm fine." He nodded, then said something that made my stomach twist. "I've been thinking about hiring another assistant. Things are getting overwhelming again." "Clara." He meant Clara. "Do what you think is best," I said, and kissed him lightly before heading to bed. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in the dark, my eyes on the ceiling, my thoughts on fire. I could feel the timeline tightening, the moment of truth approaching. I knew it wouldn't be long before he slipped up again, before something gave. But I wasn't going to wait around for that. I was going to take control before the next storm hit. It was a Tuesday morning when everything started to crack. Not break, no, not yet, but crack, like glass under pressure, fine lines spreading out invisibly until the whole thing was ready to shatter. Jamie had forgotten his lunch. I was still in my robe, halfway through coffee, when I noticed his lunchbox on the counter next to his water bottle. I cursed softly under my breath and grabbed my keys. Clara had just left with him, walking him to the school around the corner, one of the perks of living in a quiet, clean neighborhood where everyone waved and pretended nothing bad ever happened. I wasn't planning to see anything. I wasn't looking for trouble. But trouble has a way of showing itself when you're not ready. I drove slowly, windows cracked, my hair still wet from the shower. As I turned the corner near the playground, I saw them. Mark's car, parked on the side of the road. Not at the office. Not near any meetings. Just sitting there. And he wasn't alone. Clara stood beside the driver's side window, leaned in, her hand resting on the car door like she'd done it 100 times before. They weren't touching, not that I could see, but her smile, that too sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes, told me everything. I didn't stop. I didn't confront. I drove past, slowly, calmly, heart pounding against my ribs like a warning bell. He had lied again. He hadn't been working late. He wasn't in early meetings. He was meeting her. Secretly. Near our son's school. And he thought I wouldn't notice. That night, I didn't speak much. I let him talk about his day, the clients, some issue with inventory, and nodded at all the right moments. I didn't ask about Clara. I didn't mention seeing his car. I didn't give him a reason to lie. I just watched him spin his web, thread by thread, not realizing I'd already found the scissors. Later, I went to the office. I worked late, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. I needed time alone, without eyes on me, to start laying out the next step. The legal plan was in place. The financial trail was mapped. But now came the emotional part, the part where I would need to move carefully, like a chess player 2 steps ahead. I opened a document on my computer titled simply, Future. Inside were 3 sections. Custody. Ownership. Exit. I wasn't going to leave empty-handed. I wasn't going to let him charm his way into taking what we built together. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let that woman help raise my child. That weekend, I suggested we go away. Just the 3 of us. A family weekend at the lake house. He looked surprised, almost guilty, but said yes too quickly. Of course, he said, kissing my forehead, we need that. We deserve a break. I booked it that night. A quiet cabin. No Wi-Fi. Just trees, water, and silence. I wanted to see them together, him and Jamie. I wanted to remember the man he used to be, the father he still tried to pretend he was. Maybe I needed to know if there was anything left to save. Maybe part of me still hoped he would choose us. Choose me. But hope is a dangerous thing. And I'd already learned what it cost. The lake was calm that Saturday morning. Jamie skipped rocks along the shore while Mark grilled breakfast. We laughed. We talked. He looked at me like he used to, like I was still his person. I watched him carefully. Every smile. Every gesture. I couldn't tell if it was real, or if he was just a better actor than I gave him credit for. That night, after Jamie was asleep, we sat on the porch with a bottle of wine between us. The stars were sharp in the sky, the kind of sky you can't see in the city. I miss this, he said quietly. Yeah, I replied, my voice soft, me too. He looked at me then, something like hesitation in his eyes. There's something I've been meaning to talk to you about. I stiffened but nodded. Okay. He sighed, looked away. I think we've both been distracted. Lately? Distracted. Yeah. With work. With life. With everything. And I don't want us to drift. You know. I tilted my head. Is that what we're doing? He looked surprised. You tell me. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I smiled. We're okay, Mark. Just tired. We've been through worse. He let out a breath, relieved. Yeah, you're right. He took my hand. And in that moment I knew 2 things. 1, he wasn't going to confess, and 2, he genuinely thought I didn't know. That was his mistake. And I was going to use it. Back home, everything returned to routine. Clara was back Monday morning, cheerful and helpful, brushing Jamie's hair and humming some off-key nursery rhyme. I watched her with a strange calm, like a hunter watching prey too dumb to know it's already been cornered. But then something changed. On Wednesday, Clara didn't come in. No call. No text. Nothing. I asked Mark if he'd heard from her. He barely blinked. No, maybe she's sick. But there was something in his voice. Something off. A hesitation. That night I checked her social media. Deactivated. Her phone? Straight to voicemail. Gone. It wasn't relief I felt. It was suspicion. Why disappear now? Unless she knew. Unless he told her. Unless... I checked the drawer where I kept the dashcam copy. Gone. Just gone. Panic crawled up my spine like ice water. I turned the house upside down. Nothing. I checked backups. They were still there. Encrypted. Safe. But the physical drive, his mistake, his proof was missing. He knew. Or at least he suspected. But he wasn't saying anything. Not yet. And neither was I. Because I still had one more move to make. It's strange how silence between two people can grow louder than words. After Clara disappeared, the quiet in our house wasn't peaceful anymore. It was suffocating, like walking into a room where something terrible had just happened and no one dared to mention it. Mark didn't bring her up again. Not once. No, I hope she's okay. No, did she call back? It was as if she had never existed, as if her name had been quietly erased from our lives like chalk from a board. But it was too clean. Too neat. And I'd learned to mistrust anything that tidy. He was hiding something. Again. And now I had to move faster. The missing USB drive was more than a threat. It was a message. A warning. Whether Mark had found it himself or Clara had tipped him off, I didn't know. But either way, he knew I knew something. The dance we were performing, pretending everything was fine, was becoming harder to maintain. So I turned to my lawyer. Again. I want to move forward, I told her. She gave me a long, steady look. You understand what this means? Yes. This will be messy. Public eventually. You're prepared for that. I've been preparing for weeks. We went through everything: custody arrangements, asset division, the business structure. I signed documents. Quietly. Deliberately. My hand shook once, only once, when I initialed the clause that stated irreconcilable differences. I wanted to scratch it out and write infidelity, betrayal, emotional cruelty. But I didn't. I was past the point of anger. What I needed now was control. And then I made the hardest decision of all. I filed the papers. But I didn't serve them. Not yet. I wanted him to see it coming. I wanted him to realize, step by step, that the world he took for granted was crumbling beneath his feet. That night we had dinner like always. Chicken, rice, steamed vegetables. Jamie told us about a project he was working on in school, something about building a model bridge. He was so proud, so excited. I listened. I smiled. But part of me couldn't stop wondering how many more family dinners we had left. After Jamie went to bed, I stayed in the kitchen. Mark came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. You've been quiet lately, he murmured. I turned to face him. You keep saying that. Because it's true. I looked into his eyes. Maybe I've just had a lot on my mind. He hesitated, then said, about us. I let the question hang in the air between us. Then softly I replied, about everything. He pulled away slightly, searching my face for something: fear, doubt, forgiveness. I didn't give it to him. Look, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I know things have been tense, but I want to fix this. Whatever this is. I tilted my head. Do you? Of course I do. Don't you? I didn't answer. He sighed. Is this still about work? About the business? I smiled just a little. Maybe. You've been shutting me out. And you've been lying to me. His face changed just for a second. Then he recovered. I'm not lying. I raised an eyebrow. Okay. He looked like he wanted to say something else but didn't. Instead, he kissed my cheek and walked away. Upstairs, I heard him pour a drink. The creak of the floorboards above me was the only sound left in the room. That weekend, Jamie went to stay with my sister. Just to sleep over, something fun. He was excited and Mark didn't argue, which surprised me, because that meant we were alone. Saturday morning, I dressed simply. Jeans. Sweater. No makeup. I wanted to look calm. In control. I waited until he was having coffee. Then I sat down across from him at the kitchen island. We need to talk. He stiffened slightly, lowered his cup. About. You know what? He held my gaze, and for the first time in weeks he didn't pretend. You've known, haven't you? Yes. How long? Since the dashcam footage. His face paled. That was it, the confirmation I needed. He had known I found it. Maybe Clara told him. Maybe he found the drive himself. But now the mask was off, and neither of us was pretending anymore. Where is she? I asked. I don't know. Don't lie. I'm not. She left. She got scared. She thought you might do something legal or worse. She was right. He let out a bitter laugh. So what happens now? I leaned in. Now? Now you're going to listen. He crossed his arms. I'm listening. You cheated on me. You lied to me. You put our child at risk. You compromised our business. But I didn't blow it up. Not yet. He stayed silent. I'm filing. Custody full. Business my name only. The house? You can have it. It's just walls. His jaw clenched. You think you can just take everything? I'm not taking anything. I'm keeping what I built. You're the one who threw it away. What about Jamie? You can see him. Supervised. If the court agrees. This is insane. You're doing this like it's a game. No. You played the game. I'm just winning it. For a long time he didn't say a word. Then he stood, walked out of the kitchen, and disappeared into the garage. I sat there, heart pounding, hands still. The war had started. And I wasn't losing. You think you're prepared for the fallout. You tell yourself that once you finally speak the truth out loud, once the words are out in the air between you, the hardest part is over. But that's a lie. The truth is just the first match. What comes after is the fire. Mark didn't come back inside for hours after our conversation in the kitchen. I heard the garage door open once, then close again, but no car left. Just him pacing, thinking, unraveling. I sat in the living room, the house unnaturally quiet. The kind of quiet where you hear your own heartbeat, your own breath, every creak in the floorboards like a countdown. When he finally came back in, his face was blank. Too blank. He didn't speak, just walked past me, up the stairs and into our bedroom. The door closed and I didn't follow. The next morning he was gone. No note. No goodbye. Just a half-empty closet and the subtle absence of his cologne in the bathroom. He stayed away for 3 days. In that time I met again with the lawyer. She said it was starting to move faster than anticipated. He'll fight it, she warned me. But we're ready. I was ready too. Almost. Because one thing kept nagging at me. One loose thread I couldn't ignore. Clara. Where was she? What had she said to him before she left? What was he hiding? On day 4 I found out. It was afternoon, just after I'd picked up Jamie from school. He was in the living room with a snack and a cartoon playing too loud. I was making tea when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My stomach flipped. I opened the door and froze. It was Clara. She looked thinner. Tired. Nervous. Her long blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was clutching a tote bag like a shield. Hi, she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. Can I talk to you? She asked. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. Something in her voice made me pause. Not guilt, something else. Fear. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. She exhaled shakily. I'm sorry. I crossed my arms. Which part? All of it. I didn't come here to defend myself. I didn't know how else to tell you. He's dangerous. I blinked. Excuse me. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought he loved me. I thought he was going to leave you for me. But then when I started to panic, when I told him I wanted to end it, that I didn't want to be part of destroying a family, he changed. Changed how? He threatened me. Said he'd ruin me if I ever told you anything. That he had ways. Connections. I studied her face. Why should I believe you? Because I have proof. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small phone. A burner. She handed it to me, hands shaking. There are recordings, she whispered. Of him. What he said. What he planned to do if you ever found out. I took the phone. Turned it on. Audio files. Dozens. I clicked the first one. Mark's voice. Calm, smooth, familiar. She's smarter than she looks. If she figures this out, we flip it. Make her look unstable. Emotional. Easy. My knees went weak. I sat on the front step. Clara stood there silently watching me break. I didn't know who he really was, she said. Not until it was too late. I looked up at her. Why now? Why give me this? Because I'm scared. And I'm sorry. And you didn't deserve this. She turned and walked away before I could ask anything else. I sat there for a long time, the cold seeping through the concrete, the phone heavy in my hands. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to Jamie's soft breathing down the hall, staring at the ceiling and replaying Mark's voice over and over in my mind. If she figures this out, we flip it. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a strategy. He was never just cheating. He was preparing for war. And now I had ammunition. The next day, I brought the phone to my lawyer. She listened to 3 files and didn't even blink. We'll use it, she said. Is it enough? It's more than enough. Later that week, I filed an emergency order. Freezing assets. Securing our son's passport. Mark had left quietly, but I wasn't going to let him leave with anything that mattered. He called me that night. No, hi. No, how's Jamie? Just you talked to her, didn't you? I didn't respond. Whatever she gave you, it's fake. Still, I said nothing. Listen, he continued, more desperate now, we can fix this. You don't have to burn everything down. I smiled though he couldn't see it. You already did, Mark. I'm just walking through the ashes. Then I hung up. And I didn't hear from him again. The hardest part isn't watching someone you love lie to your face. It's realizing they practiced it. Perfected it. Looked you in the eyes and smiled while plotting your undoing. That was Mark. Clean-cut charm with dirty hands. After Clara left me that phone, everything changed. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore, it was tactical. He hadn't just made a mistake. He'd made a plan. And now he knew I had it in my hands. And I wasn't hiding anymore. We moved fast. My lawyer was brilliant, cold, quiet, and surgically precise. She filed the injunctions. She drafted the restraining order. She built the case like a fortress, brick by brick, until even the smallest crack had been sealed. We presented the audio files under seal, with dates, metadata, and corroborating timelines. The judge didn't hesitate. Emergency custodial protection was granted. Temporary freeze on all business assets. He wouldn't even be allowed to sign a business check without my approval. When I got the news, I sat in my car outside Jamie's school, hands shaking around the steering wheel, and cried. Not because I was sad. Because for the first time in weeks, I felt powerful again. That night, I told Jamie we were going on a little trip. Just the 2 of us. Somewhere quiet, just for a few days. He lit up. Can we go to the cabin again? The one with the frogs. I smiled. Even better. I packed 2 small bags, left the lights on at home, and texted a neighbor to keep an eye on the place. Mark hadn't shown up in person since our last call, but something told me that was about to change. We drove for hours, Jamie asleep in the back seat, the sky outside bruised with clouds. The cabin was smaller than the lake house. Remote. Peaceful. And most importantly, off the grid. No cell service. No internet. Just space to breathe. I needed that. Jamie needed it more. The first day we hiked. The second we stayed in, played board games, made pancakes, and read books by the fireplace. By the 3rd day, I started to feel like something resembling myself again. But the 4th day he found us. It was just after noon. I'd stepped outside to bring in more firewood when I saw the car. His car. It pulled up slowly on the gravel path, and I felt that now familiar burn in my chest, not fear. Focus. Clarity. He stepped out, wearing jeans and a dark sweater, trying to look casual. His smile was strained, eyes scanning the trees like he couldn't decide whether he was chasing or running. Nice place, he said. I didn't respond. I saw the lights on at home, but no one answered. Then I remembered this place. You shouldn't be here. I'm still his father. Legally? That's on pause. He laughed, short and bitter. So that's how we're doing this? No, I said. That's how you did this. He took a few steps closer. I didn't back away. You're making this worse than it has to be. I folded my arms. You threatened me. You planned to discredit me. That wasn't a mistake, Mark. That was premeditated. He shook his head. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You thought I'd break. You thought you could control the fallout. But you never planned for what would happen if I didn't fall apart. His voice lowered. You think you can take everything? I'm not taking anything that wasn't already mine. His expression shifted, something colder now. Less polished. You can't win. I took a step forward. I already did. Silence. Then he looked toward the cabin window where Jamie's shadow was faintly visible behind the curtain. He's still my son. And he'll know that. But he'll also know who protected him. Mark's jaw tightened. This isn't over. No, I said softly, this is the part where it ends. He didn't say goodbye. Just turned, got in the car, and drove away. I stood there long after he left, the wind picking up around me, trees whispering overhead. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like I was standing on broken glass. I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The snow began to fall the morning after Mark left. It came softly, without ceremony, just a hush over the trees, a stillness in the air, as if the world itself was exhaling. I stood at the window, coffee warming my hands, watching the flakes drift past the glass like pieces of ash from a fire long burned out. Jamie was still asleep, curled up in his blanket, the same stuffed bear tucked under his arm that he'd carried since he was 3. He hadn't asked about his dad since the visit. He hadn't said a word about the car in the driveway, or the man standing outside. Children know more than we give them credit for. And sometimes they understand silence better than answers. That afternoon, we drove back to the city. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like a woman who'd won anything. I just felt done. The war was over, but the wounds remained. The house was exactly how we left it. Light timer still working, fridge humming like it didn't know the world had changed. I unpacked quietly. Jamie went to his room without needing to be told. Later, I stood in my office and opened the drawer where the USB used to be. Empty. Just a space. But now it didn't matter. The recordings, the files, the audio from Clara's phone, it was all secured, archived, and submitted. The legal proceedings unfolded like clockwork after that. With Mark gone, his lawyer attempted negotiation, but we weren't negotiating anymore. We were closing. The judge granted me full custody. Supervised visits for him if he applied. He never did. The business, our once shared dream, was dissolved and restructured under a new name. Mine. Some staff left. Some stayed. The transition was hard but clean. I kept the parts worth saving, cut out the rot. Just like I had in my personal life. A few months passed. Then summer came. One night, after putting Jamie to bed, I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine, watching fireflies blink in the dark like tiny lanterns. I thought about the woman I was just 6 months ago, the one who found the USB, the one who chose silence over screaming, strategy over panic. I didn't know her then. But I know her now. She saved me. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Mark. Inside was one page. No, dear. No, love. Just a note. You were right. You were always the stronger one. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could keep everything separate. I was wrong. Tell Jamie I think about him every day. I folded the letter and slid it into the back of my filing cabinet behind tax returns and property deeds. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. But it was something. Some days I still ask myself why. Why he did it. Why she did it. Why I let it go on as long as I did. But questions like that don't heal you. They anchor you to the past. And I've had enough anchors. Jamie is thriving. He talks more now. Sleeps better. He laughs without looking over his shoulder. And sometimes at night when I tuck him in, he says, I'm glad it's just us. And I tell him, me too. I don't date yet. Not because I'm afraid, but because I'm still relearning how to be whole. I don't want something that isn't based on survival. But one day I will. Not for revenge. Not to prove anything. Just because I can. Because I'm free now. And in the end, that's what this story really is. Not about betrayal. Not about revenge. But about freedom. The kind you fight for. The kind you earn. The kind that starts the moment you stop asking, why did he do this to me? And start asking, what can I do for myself now? And when I look in the mirror these days, I don't see a wife or a victim or a woman scorned. I see a survivor. I see a mother. I see the one who stayed calm when everything burned. And I see someone who, even in the darkest hour, never stopped choosing herself.